as humans, we very often convince ourselves that we want an easy life and that we want safety and security and certainty. And it's very often the reason why people don't do things. And it's very often the reason why sometimes people want to join my coaching plan, but never do, because they want certainty, certainty of results, certainty of progress, certainty of fat loss, certainty of muscle gain. And it's something that in 99% of situations, you will never be able to get, because until you get started, you never know. So very often people might say to me, how much weight will I lose? How much muscle will I gain? Will you be able to fix my mental health problems? And in most transactions, we can find some certainty. So if you go and buy a new car, you know exactly what car you're going to buy. You do the exchange and you get that car. The same with a handbag or a holiday or any item of clothing or any material thing. But with transformation and life progress, nothing will ever be certain. And it's having an inappropriate need for certainty, which is unavailable, which very often stops people getting started. Now, it's natural to feel this way. The body's designed, our brain's designed to seek out safety, to seek out comfort, and to seek out certainty. And how often have you heard yourself say something along the lines of, I just want an easy life, me, or anything for an easy life? I certainly know that I've said those phrases in the past. And it's very often why we stay quiet. It's very often why we don't speak up. It's very often why we stay in unhappy relationships. It's very often why we avoid conflict. And it's very often why we spend our lives borderline miserable, playing the role of an extra in somebody else's movie. This is the typical 9 to 5, 8 hours a day for 40 years of their life, doing the same thing, getting up, going to work, getting home, sorting the kids out, watching the soaps, going to the gym, going to sleep, getting through another week, getting through to the weekend, doing this maybe for a block period, and then going on the 2-week holiday and repeating. And it's very often ending in blowing off steam. Like I said, getting through another week, which is a phrase that I never want you to use. I want you to embrace every week with adventure and excitement, not get through to the weekend or get through another day. You know, some people have even put this in their wins before. What was your biggest win this week? Getting through this week. And if you're feeling like that, we need to assess it. And it's very often not your fault, because these safe, secure, certain lives are what society deems as normal. It's doing what's expected of us. It can start as early as 4 or 5 years old and go all the way through life doing what our parents expected of us, doing what our teachers expected of us, doing what our partners expected of us, doing what our bosses expected of us. And the reality is, this works for some people, and it allows them to have a safe, secure, certain, happy, and fulfilled life. Now, that's not for me. But if that does work for you and you have true happiness in finding that, then amazing. But if you want something more, and I think you do, or you wouldn't be watching this video, then we have to understand we're going to have to search out and find what this more is. Now, I am the direct opposite. And it's why I've never been able to work for anyone else. It's why I've never really fitted into any form of society. And we're all different, and we need to respect this. And I respect this in each and every one of you. But if you do feel you want more and you deserve more and you want to find more, then I urge you to keep listening, because I believe it's important. And nothing is important for me as having freedom, purpose, a vision, a mission, and an exciting vision of my future that I want to get out of bed each day and run towards. Now, I very much can come across as selfish. I like doing whatever I want, however I want, whenever I want. And I can react badly sometimes to being told what to do, or being restricted, or being held back. That's just who I am. But I want to live my life on my terms. And I never want to apologize for anyone for who I am, or what I want, or where I want to go. And this might come down to visions in terms of career, visions in terms of lifestyle, visions in terms of body goals, visions in terms of mindset goals, travel, or how you want to live your life. But I don't want to ask anyone for permission on how to live my life. Yet I still very often do. So I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it. It still feels a little bit selfish. It still feels a little bit uncomfortable. But you know, we are all have the freedom to be the kings or queens of our kingdoms, and to be okay with that. It doesn't mean you have to be selfish, but it's very hard not to feel that way. Now, personally, I know if I'm not chasing something, if I'm not chasing dreams, if I'm not running after a mission, if I'm not doing another challenge, then I feel depressed, because I get lost in my own thoughts. Because when I'm not focusing on what I'm working towards, I'm generally focusing on how I'm feeling and what's not working for me. And if I haven't got something that's constantly requiring more of me, because I've got comfortable and certain and safety, this has happened in my business many times, everything's going great, start to drop my standards, I start to switch off, I start to get distracted. And, you know, I don't feel like I'm normal in any way, but I'm starting to understand how I can leverage this as a superpower, and how I can use my neurological differences or disorders as superpowers, not burdens, because I'm either razor focused on what I'm moving towards, or I'm going backwards. I don't believe there's any standing still. I don't believe there's any maintenance. I don't believe we can get to any place and just stay there, because time moves on. So for me, if I'm not moving forwards, I'm going backwards. And if I'm going backwards, I'll start to feel down. This is why I could never do a 9 to 5. But like I said, it's important that we all respect others. And some people, that may work for them. So again, if you're maybe in a relationship, working or personal, where that works for the other person, that's great. Allow them to be on that journey and for that to work for them. But that doesn't mean you have to be on that journey for them too. And it also doesn't mean they have to hold you back from your journey, which would be different. Now, we're very often held back by these opinions of others. And as I've discussed several times, we don't naturally doubt ourselves. What happens is we ask other people their opinion on everything. And then this fills us with self-doubt, because they are not us. So their opinion might be, no, Lee, play it safe. Play it certain, get to a place where you're comfortable, and then just aim to stay there. That doesn't work for me. Now, we also then build this into, we very often put other people first. So we don't just ask their opinions, we put them first, and then we look after ourselves. But I believe if you're not running towards your ambitions, and your ambitions and your dreams and your desires are being crushed by somebody else in your life, then this will eventually drain your energy, because your work will then only serve to either elevate others, i.e. build their businesses, or to live your life by their rules and their dreams. So, as I said, this can start really early, can't it? Go to school, GCSEs, do your A-levels, go to uni, fall into said career, get married, 2.4 children, happily ever after. It's what society deems normal. Now, if you think back, I went through that whole process, GCSEs, A-levels, university. Why? Because what was deemed normal. It's what everyone else at school did. It's what everyone else did when they got to A-levels. It's what everyone else did when they got to uni. Everyone went to uni. Maybe if you didn't go to uni, you were deemed as less than the other people that did. So you went because your parents expected you to go to uni. And this is why I believe so many people's lives go wrong. And this is when we start to find self-soothing or solace in synthetic highs. Now, I'm not just talking about drugs or alcohol or food. I'm talking about purchases. I'm talking about holidays. I'm talking about weekends away. I'm talking about football every weekend, because we're looking for something to get a high from in our life that we don't get from our career. So we very often fall into this zone of we settle for a decent life. And again, we're told, Lee, you should be happy with what you've got. You should be grateful for what you've got. But if what you've got isn't making you feel excited, and in fact, it's making you feel shit, then again, don't feel guilty for wanting more. Because if your life is crushed into this box and your Monday to Friday isn't making you feel fulfilled, and you've gone on to autopilot and you're settling, this is when the weekends happen. The drinking, the football, the fights, the handbags, the shoes, the food, the holidays, the casual sex, the caravans, the taking drugs, the drinking, the holidays, all the things that we do to escape life, because life isn't making us feel high and fulfilled. Now, how about if we can start to look for natural highs in our lives, in our careers, in our relationships, in our hobbies, that don't involve having to have something synthetic in order to feel that way, because they are generally only done to escape. And it's even tolerated by society now. Why? Because it helps keep people in their place. It helps keep them controlled. But if your life lacks purpose and meaning and fulfillment, and there are no highs, this is why we find them in these places. So even now, if I'm not on my mission, I will start to drift off. I will start to look at where I can get away from life, how I can escape, how I can have a bit of time off, because I'm a person who needs adrenaline. I need a buzz. I need something to chase. And if I find that in synthetic highs, then my life is always going to be meaningless and destructive. So I have to find that in other places. But we all have this inner beast inside that needs releasing. But trust me, there are better ways to find it than a new handbag, a night on the piss, or eating junk food at the weekend. So again, very often though, it comes into this avoiding discomfort that we've talked about, because these non-synthetic natural highs very often take a lot of work and effort and discipline and commitment. And I'm going to be filming another video on sometimes why it's so important that we don't just look at what we need to do more of, we look at what we need to stop doing. You guys will remember the training on the non-growth habits, the not to-do list. So very often, if we do feel depressed, down, lost, stuck in a rut, this is when we drink. This is when we eat. This is when we gamble. Because working on the cause of what's causing the unhappiness is a lot harder and traumatic and painful than just continuing to escape. So it's easier to just get pissed every weekend than to actually face the demons of the reason why you're getting pissed. It's easier to just binge eat at the weekend rather than to face the demons of why you're binge eating. And this is what we do. We're looking for a way to escape, so we don't have to face these things. But this is what saps your energy. It's just a plaster over the cracks, and it will eventually become destructive, and it can be fatal. So very often, also, it doesn't just happen when we're feeling depressed, does it? This is where the self-sabotage thing comes in. Who's been in a place when they're like, oh my God, I'm absolutely flying, but you're flying so hard, you're like, oh, this is amazing, but I'm due a good blowout. Who said that phrase before? I'm due a good blowout. Well, why? You know, you're already flying, things are great, but you convince yourself you need a good blowout, and you know the results of that blowout are going to be destructive. Now, again, it's about redefining that blowout. That blowout could be running a marathon. It could be going boxing. It could be doing a tough mudder. It could be anything that gives you a high and a break from the norm, a break from work, life, family, but doesn't have to have a destructive ending to it. Now, we will have to learn to find this. You need to find what this buzz is. What gives me a buzz that isn't destructive? That is a question that I urge each and every one of you to ask yourselves. You know, exercise is one. It could be boxing, it could be fishing, it could be CrossFit, it could be triathlon, riding motorbikes, climbing mountains, adrenaline, doing things with the kids, building a business, getting a side hustle. They're all out there, but we very often don't really look for them. And if we can find that thing that gives us the same payoff and the same buzz as the destructive habits, this is when we will really move forward, because the destructive ones we know. Alcohol and anxiety, it's like pouring accelerant on a fire. It's only going to get worse. It will blanket the pain out, put a plaster over the crack for a matter of hours, but then it will come back worse. So again, I did this for many years, digging into, you know, losing my mum, being cast aside by my dad, suffering years of physical and mental abuse that had a unique effect on me. And all your traumas might be very different to this. They might be smaller. It might just be a food issue. It might just be a mindset issue. But if you're still experiencing this anger, this frustration, and this resentment, and you're still dealing with it by doing something destructive on top of it, getting smashed or binging, maybe struggling to hold down a solid job that you enjoy or a relationship, and this destruction is still happening in your life, then isn't it time that we started to look at the reason why it's happening and how we deal with it? Isn't it worth looking maybe into the past a little bit? You guys hear me talk so much about only focus forward, but if it's something past that's not still dealt with, isn't it worth looking into it to say, well, you know, why do I keep behaving this way? And how can I change it? Why do I keep making these same decisions when I know what the outcome is going to be? Is it career boredom? Is it a past trauma you've not dealt with? Is it that you're suffocated in a relationship or a career? Is it that you're still hiding mental struggles from your childhood that you haven't opened up and talked about? And if so, don't you owe it to yourself and others to bring this back up and get it handled and measure backwards skillfully before moving forwards? Because if we just keep putting a carpet on top of it, that carpet will eventually come up. So why do we keep feeling the same way? Why do we keep making the same mistakes? Do you really understand why it's happening and why? If not, that's what I believe we all need to look into, because the longer you hide, the longer you suppress, the longer you avoid the discomfort of maybe exercise, sorting your diet out, looking for a new career, and in a toxic relationship, the harder your life will get. Avoidance will lead to more pain. Avoiding discomfort will lead to more discomfort. So stop limiting your potential and be willing to look at what we need to change, what we need to go through, what we need to deal with, what we need to find, and start to get clear after that on what your dreams are. And let's start working towards them with everything we've got. Let's get clear on what we need to get handled, how we get it handled, what we want to move towards, and how we move towards it. So not just the moving towards, because the moving towards, if we haven't handled some of the stuff, will always lead to that cycle of burnout and self-sabotage, because it will eventually rear its ugly head again. So think deeply this week about what it is you want. What do you really want to move towards? What floats your boat? What gets you excited? And don't allow other people's thoughts and opinions to hold you back from wanting that. Be audacious enough to want more in whatever area of that life you want to progress in. Is it you need to find a hobby? Is it your career? Is it your body? Is it your physique? Is it running marathons? Is it having a more affluent social life? For some people, it might be the fact that they've just become hermits and they're not really doing anything. They're not doing anything destructive, but they're not doing anything that makes them feel happy as well. Because all of you has a beast inside and it needs releasing. But it doesn't have to be suppressed. It can be released and nurtured and encouraged. So don't be afraid of wanting more, being more, and doing more in order to get it. Because it's a new day today. So let's seize it with everything that you have, and tomorrow and the day after, without thinking too far ahead. Because if you're struggling with your mental health, then today is the day to ask for help. Speak to me, speak to a therapist, speak to a close friend. If you're struggling with alcohol, drugs, gambling, food, today is the day to start looking at why. Why does this keep happening and how do I solve it? Not I'll keep pretending it's not happening, plastering it over with another synthetic high and cracking on without talking about it. If you're so unhappy in your career that all you can think about is getting through another week, getting through another day, getting through the weekend, if you're experiencing what I call Friday euphoria and Monday morning blues, again, I did this for many years, then today is the day to start looking at new career options. If you're in a relationship that's making you feel trapped, unhappy, full of doubt, making you feel worthless, then today is the day to start assessing why. And maybe it's time to end it. Because each and every one of you only has one life. And you have to live with yourself for every day of that life. And if the you is unhappy, then you have to live with that person, but you can make that person happy. It's your responsibility. So let's create better versions of ourselves for every day of the future. Take out a blank piece of paper right now, after this video, and start journaling and thinking about, how do I want my life to look? What fun do I want to have? How do I want my fitness to look? How do I want to work on my finances? What do I want to do more of with my family? Where do I want to travel? What do I want my work life to look like? What do I want my work-life balance to look like? And how am I going to start making the most of each and every day, rather than waking up thinking, I just need to get through another day in the hope that there is something more prosperous further along, as long as I keep getting through another day. Guys, I love you all. Make today a great one. We're all masters of our own destiny. You are in charge. You only have one life. Let's get clear on what we want. Let's get clear on the plan to get there. Let's make sure we ask for help and make the changes needed if we need to, and approach today as a fresh start, like the unbreakable warriors that you are. Let's go.